Every week, it seems like Horikoshi sets the bar higher and higher, and this chapter is no exception. There is more Deku versus Tomura All for One, the reveal of the second user's original quirk, and a surprise appearance from Spinner of all people. So many things happened, so let's get into it. Chapter 369, titled Many Years, begins with a flashback. But not just any flashback. It's a look at the final fight between All for One and the second user. A ruined city surrounds them. Countless bodies lay at their feet. All for One is holding the second by the neck. Yet All for One is crying. The second is clearly about to die. We can speculate forever as to why All for One is crying. He's never really shown emotion like this, so seeing him be this vulnerable is bizarre. Either way, let's focus on the second. He has been caught by All for One. Not to mention, blood is covering his head. Truthfully, he looks bruised, battered, and defeated. Regardless of these facts, he does not give up. Behind All for One comes a speeding bullet. Unfortunately, it is easily destroyed by him. His inner thoughts show exactly what he thinks of the quirk. In very typical All for One fashion, your pathetic little pea shooter of a quirk was fit for nothing. Then, it is finally time. The second user's quirk is revealed. It's not what I was thinking, but I am also not disappointed. Although it does remind me of Deku's mom. While her quirk may attract small objects, the second controls their speed. Kinda interesting if you ask me. Anyhow, All for One continues his inner narration, still belittling the second. He sees the One for All holder as pretentious and lesser than himself. However, the second still has a smile on his face. Once again, we see All Might's philosophy in play. No matter the situation or danger, always be optimistic. Unfortunately, it's lights out for the second as we switch back to the present. As Tomura All for One is falling, Deku is above him with the aura of the second's quirk. He is enraged. It's not just because Deku is his equal, but because he can see the One for All vestiges. And honestly, I've been waiting a while to see this. We have seen Shigaraki, All for One, and Deku all in the vestige world together. So clearly, they can at least see each other's vestiges. That being said, Tomura All for One isn't seeing all the vestiges. Only the second and Yoichi materialize. Still, it is enough to anger him. All the while, we are treated to more information on Deku's new quirk. Well, new to us. Speaking of new, there has been a bit of a correction. As of right now, the quirk is called Gear Shift and not Transmission. It has also received a power-up like One for All. But that isn't all. Deku understands the quirk down to his very cells. The combination of One for All and Gear Shift is insane. With it, Deku is able to unleash Detroit Smash Quintuple. Honestly, seeing Deku deliver a smash to Tomura Shigaraki was way too satisfying. Plus, the art is amazing. Horikoshi just continues to prove how talented he is. That aside, Deku's attack leaves a massive crater. Its force creates dust and debris to explode around them. Unfortunately, even that isn't going to stop Tomura All for One. Deku knows this too, which is why he charges Tomura All for One again. No rest for the wicked, I suppose. Meanwhile, the amalgamation of All for One and Shigaraki notices that Deku has picked up speed. He is faster than before, which is saying a lot. His velocity before mimicked the second. Now, Deku is on a totally different plane. Although Tomura All for One wonders if this is related to the hero's luminescent aura. And I really look forward to this being animated. I'm hoping it resembles the lightning we currently see in the anime. Regardless, Tomura All for One believes he can predict Deku's attacks. How, you might ask? The monstrous villain thinks he can foresee movement based on both the angle and timing of previous attacks. With his massive mutated arm, he makes a fist. Tomura All for One flies towards Deku. Two gigantic titans are about to clash. Thankfully, Deku shifts into low gear. The second is behind him and explains that gear shift ignores inertia while changing speed. Now, inertia is a word I haven't heard since high school. With this very big power-up, Deku quite literally laughs in the face of physics. And speaking of our young hero, his expression is hardened. He is still angry, but determined and ready. This is a title fight, and Deku is out to win. Tomura All for One winds up his punch. He is also prepared to talk trash. But suddenly, the attack missed entirely. A massive cloud of smoke screen covers Tomura All for One's view. It is a combination of several quirks. Though smoke screen does not explain why Tomura All for One missed. Due to shifting into low gear, Deku was able to avoid his attack. The surprise even shocks Tomura All for One. He's not falling. He's right on the money too. The young hero is above him. Before he realizes it, Tomura All for One is whisked higher into the air by Black Whip. The action confuses the veteran villain. Meanwhile, Deku is back to his old tricks. He talks to himself, explaining his combo. First, locate Tomura All for One via Danger Sense. then immediately block his sight with smokescreen. Right after, float using Shimmer Nana's quirk. Fourth, restrain the ultimate evil while he's distracted. The last thing is a bit of a doozy. Finally, store up the power from Quintuple with Third Spot Jin and Overdrive. What's interesting to note is that Deku is moving so fast that his pupils are blurred. I cannot wait to see what Bones does with this. That aside, this moment is spectacular. I've waited a while to see Deku combine quirks like this. After all, there are tools in his utility belt. However, right as Deku prepares his attack, we are treated to a rather beautiful panel. The aura of Gear Shift is swirling around him, and all the past users of One For All are behind him. Once again, it is the will of One For All. It's also fun to see all previous holders together. Tomura All For One's face is uncharacteristically afraid. At long last, the ultimate evil has been backed into a corner. But before he lands his blow, the second tells Deku something important. He says that Deku shouldn't be afraid of Gear Shift. What he should worry about is why people use such ridiculous power. He finishes by saying, power lies in that determination. Does this mean it is a battle of wills? I sure hope so. Both One For All and All For One exert their will on the user. Deku prepares his attack. All the while, his teeth are clenched and his expression reminds me of the War Arc. Again, this is Deku's rage. Yet it is controlled and focused. He wants nothing more than to stop Tomura All For One, and if possible, save little Tenko. Through this thick anger, Deku tells Tomura All For One that he is not holding back. Honestly, this fight is going to be one of the best of the series, if not the best. If Tomura All For One manages to use his quirks too, we will be in for a legendary battle. But then, Deku calls out to All For One. He tells the despicable villain that he won't let him hurt anyone else. And it is at that moment, we see everyone else. Mirio is carrying an injured and possibly unconscious Nejide. Meanwhile, best girl Miruko is standing. Good news for Miruko fans. Next to her is Tamaki. He is not clutching his stomach and appears unconscious as well. From the landscape, it is clear both heroes are in a different area than before. The last we saw, Miruko was leaning against a tree. Tamaki, on the other hand, was in a more open area. Besides, it's most likely Mirio moved them. Besides Deku, he is the only hero not mortally wounded. Plus, his quirk allows him to easily maneuver the battlefield. We also see Bakugo. Unfortunately, he's still dead. Regardless, Best Genius is still by his side while Edgeshot repairs the explosive hero internally. But let's shift back to Tomura All For One. He yells at Deku, "Silence, you insect!" Clearly, the hero's words have gotten to him. And finally, the moment we have all been waiting for. Deku lands a solid punch on Tomura All For One. The strength of it causes multiple mounds of flesh and fingers to fly off. Tomura All For One sees significant damage for the second time. A large, black hole appears in his chest. The mighty villain wears a shocked expression as he begins to fall. I must admit, seeing the rods for this surprised me. I didn't think we would see Deku harm Tomura All For One substantially for a while. Meanwhile, the vestige of Yoichi manifests again behind Deku. He begins by saying he sympathizes with both One For All and All For One. He then speaks directly to his brother. Yoichi tells him, "I can see you, brother." The first goes on to say that Mirio was correct, or as Yoichi refers to him, as the young man with round eyes. Tomura All For One's unity as one entity has been shaken. Granted, I wonder how Yoichi knows that. Are All For One and One For All more connected than we believe? Only time will tell. Either way, in Tomura All For One's chest hole, we see All For One. Maybe this will end as a fight in the Vestige world. All For One isn't being physically separated from Shigaraki. It is only a mental thing affecting the bond that unites them together. As their battle continues, the second speaks to Deku again. He says that this is where it gets rough and to remember what Shimura Nana said. Meanwhile, Deku looks exhausted. His face is strained and his pupils are wild. The second also tells Deku to not pass out. Perhaps this is the physical limitation of using Gear Shift. It literally ignores the laws of physics. Surely this has to have an impact on Deku's body. But as we know, Deku would very well sacrifice his body to stop Tomura All For One. On the other side of things, Tomura All For One is insulted. He is irritated by Deku saying he won't hold back. In his mind, he hasn't shown his full potential. His perfect body has been squandered by erasure. In fact, he curses Monoma, Manuel, and Aizawa. Tomura All For One also blames the environment. "It's this damn coffin's fault." I will say, seeing the floating fortress being called a coffin again has me worried. Several heroes could kick the dust, pun intended, if Tomura All For One can activate Decay. Miruko can't stay off the ground, and the others are unconscious. Mirio couldn't save everyone. But back to Deku and Tomura All For One. Because of Deku's words, Tomura All For One thinks he is being mocked. How can he possibly compete against a fully realized One For All if he's quirkless? Back into his corner, Tomura All For One wonders if everything he has done until now was useless. This desperation and despair is a deadly combination. Something otherworldly begins to happen to Tomura All For One's body. He screams, while 9 stars that resemble One For All manifest above him. His body appears to expand, as if trying to contain something. Everyone around is confused and surprised, even Deku. For example, Aizawa mentions the villain has something up his sleeve. Is this the moment we finally see Tomura All For One overcome erasure? Will his body evolve beyond the limitations of a quirk? Personally, I hope so. He has been the poster boy of the Doomsday Quirk theory. It would only make sense he could adapt and overcome. However, Tomura All For One himself is upset by the change. He yells out, "Not yet!" all while his face is painted with fear and hurt. Regardless, All For One's inner thoughts reveal a surprise. He still believes he has a chance to win, which suddenly takes us to none other than Spinner. The beefed up, quirked up lizard stands in front of his mutant army. Drool literally gushes from his mouth and his face is crazed. This is very unlike the Spinner we have seen before. Besides that, the mutant reptile is also gigantic. The flavor text reads, "It has all been left to Spinner?" Honestly, I cannot wait to see what this setup is. It is about time we get to see some other fights. But in regards to this one, how do you guys feel about how things are going so far? Last time there were a good number of you who weren't so enthused in regards to the second quirk reveal. However, I'm wondering how you may feel right now based on how Deku has been able to use it in tandem with his other quirks. We will of course have a follow-up video in regards to all things Deku's quirks, so please leave us your input from now before you get to enjoy that one. And look out for it. As always, I'm Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.